Have you ever felt like video editing was just too complicated and you just didn't know where to start? Well, then you've clicked on the right video. By the end of this video, you should know how to import your footage, cut it together, add some sound and some color grading, and then export it for your social media or for whatever you want to use it for. All inside Premiere Pro. Before we jump in, my name is Will, also known as It Is Will on social media, and I'm a Canon ambassador and content creator that definitely knows a lot about video editing. I primarily use the R5 Mark II with a 24-70 lens, which is pretty much my main setup. Otherwise, I'll use a PowerShot V1 sometimes as well. So most of the footage you'll be seeing here is C-Log 2 from Canon, and maybe some C-Log 3 clips too. As I walk you through this process of video editing, I just want to let you know this is my personal process that I've developed over a long period of time over the years that I've been doing this. And what's great about Premiere Pro is that everyone adapts their own workflow. All right, let's jump straight in. So the very first thing I like to do, even before importing the footage, is just to organize it somewhat in your folders. As you can see, I've got the camera that I use as the folder name, so I know what footage I'm dealing with, which will be C-Log 2. So I begin the culling process through Finder with the tagging tool. And this means I can go ahead and preview some clips. So let's say I watch this clip here. And if I really like that clip, I can press Control-1, and that'll give that a little tag of red. So as you can see here, I've got some clips that I've already tagged, which are the ones that I'm going to show you today as an example. And this just makes it easier so I know which clips are actually good and then which clips I can just disregard. Now, after you make a project in Premiere Pro, you're probably going to see something like this. So the easiest way to start is just to drag our clips directly into the timeline. So the reason I like to drag my clips straight into the timeline is because then our sequence settings are set automatically to the footage that we've dragged in. But if you didn't want to do that, we can go to sequence at the top and go sequence settings. And then we can see our ratio or our resolution here that you can change to whatever you like, as well as our frame rate. I usually shoot at 4K 30 when I'm shooting with the R5 Mark II or the PowerShot V1. So I like to keep my timeline on the same frame rate and resolution. The project panel just shows all the clips that we've currently dragged into our timeline and that are being used in the project. Now, if you're really organized, you can create bins. And I'm just going to show you as an example because I personally don't do this because I'm not that organized. But if we create a bin, we can name it R5 Mark II footage. And then if we wanted to, we can then drag all our clips into that bin, and it kind of just acts like a folder so we can organize our footage a little bit easier. As you can see on the preview, it might look quite bland and flat at the moment, and that's because I've shot in log. Canon's version of that is C-Log, and this is C-Log 2. And I'll mention this a little bit later, but this comes in handy with the color grading process because there will be a bit more flexibility when we're making our creative edits. Now, the next step of the process is structure and cutting. Basically, what we're doing here is building the foundation of our video and just setting the structure out so we know what we can expect. My personal favorite tool at this stage is the razor tool, which is on this toolbar here on the side, but you can also press C and that will bring up the razor. As the razor does, this cuts through all the clips. So what I'll do is just usually watch through the footage like this, and then when I find a moment that I like, I'll go ahead and use the razor tool and cut the start of it and the end of it, and then kind of extract that from the clip. I kind of like this section here, so I think I'm gonna cut where I turn my head. And now I can delete the outsides of that and just prioritize that little section that I've cut out. And now I'm just gonna go ahead and do that for the rest of the clips. I can press the letter V and that'll bring out the normal selection tool where I can just drag my clips together now. And now it's just time to reorder them in the way that we want them to appear in the video. For example, I think I like this close-up first before we have the wide shot. So I'm going to put that at the start, then we can have our wide shot second, and then maybe we can go back to a close-up of the grass, and then our wide shot of the hills at the very end. And a quick little tip when you're just previewing your footage like this, at the bottom right of your preview window, there's a little button that you can press, and usually it will be on full. And this is basically just the resolution that Premiere Pro is generating these previews at. So I like to put it on 1/4 or even 1/8 because this just uses less space and less power. And generally for previews, I don't really need to see the full resolution until I export it. The next part of the process is music selection and rhythm. I like choosing the music early because it sets the tone, sets the mood, and also you can decide on the pacing and the rhythm of the video. Usually what I do for Instagram or TikTok, I'd go ahead and just go on my phone, scroll through sounds or scroll through music, and then screen record that section of the music that I want to use, and then sort of just airdrop that to my Mac and then use that in the timeline. But for this example, for YouTube's copyright sake, we'll use Epidemic Sound, which is an awesome library of royalty-free music. I think for this video, I really want this dreamy sort of piano music. So I've searched piano classical and I've found a song that I think will work well with this video. After we've gone ahead and downloaded the music, we can literally just drag the music right onto the audio track, which is on the bottom half of your timeline. Now what we can do next is find the section of the song that we like the best, or we could use the remix tool with Premiere Pro, which will basically cut down the music to a length of however much you like. It's customized. So if we go to our tool section here over the Ripple Edit tool and hold down on that, we can see the remix tool pops up at the very bottom here. So I'm going to click on that and we can just give it a quick go to see what it does. I'm going to go to the end of my music clip and drag that all the way to the current duration of our timeline, or the clips in our timeline, and see what it remixes. As you can see, it's already cut the music roughly to the length of my video that I've set my clips to. So we can go ahead and play and just have a listen. That's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty good. I think there is a section of the song that I do want to use already, but otherwise I'd be happy to use that regardless. Now this next step is what I do for every single video that I make, which is cutting to the beat. And it requires just a little bit of patience to listen to the music and see where the beats are at, or where the instruments sort of make a noise. And you can kind of tell where this happens with these peaks of the audio on this green track, which is the music. Now I'm just using the selection tool to drag and retime my clips. So now I've cut all the clips to the song, where you can see all the cuts are where these peaks are, where the piano notes are played. I like to put the cuts just a few frames before the music, and I don't know why, but this just sounds a little bit better when the visuals are cut just a frame or two before the sound actually kicks in. Maybe it's something to do with the human reaction time between auditory things and visual things. I mean, let me know in the comments if that's actually a thing. But now if I play it back for you, you can see that all the cuts happen on the music. There we go. This is something that just adds to the flow of the video and just helps the viewer sort of engage and be part of the auditory and the visual parts. Next up is the sound design. Arguably one of my favorite parts of video editing, even though this isn't even a visual thing, but I think sound design just brings your video to life and adds those little tangible things that people can hear, especially within the environments that are actually captured in the video. This video is quite peaceful and slow overall, and the environment sort of reflects that. So I want to include just sounds of the wind going through the grass and just let the audience know what I experienced when I was standing there in that field. You can find sound effects pretty much anywhere, including YouTube or on a variety of sound libraries that you can subscribe to or that are for free maybe. Once again, I'm going to use some sounds that I've already downloaded from Epidemic Sound and see if they match this sort of environment. If the sound that you've recorded from your camera doesn't sound quite right, like these clips here, where it's just wind straight on the microphone, then this is where sound design comes in clutch. So I'm just going to drag this wind in leave sound effect underneath our music. Once again, cut that to the length that we like. And it already just adds a little bit of texture to the video. I think I'm going to layer that with another sound effect, cut that to our timeline, and then listen to that. I think that sounds pretty good, but one thing is that it sounds a little bit too loud. It's a little bit too harsh. So this is where it's very important to keep your sound design very balanced. So nothing is too harsh and you don't have all these sounds just sort of adding on top of each other and it kind of peaks. I'm going to bring the volume down of that windstorm one, just so it's a little bit more subtle. Something else we definitely need is birds. We've added the birds. Once again, just a little bit too loud, so we're gonna drop the volume of that one as well. Next, what we can do is keep the sound design relative to the clips that we're showing. So what I can do is cut the bird sound effects and then amplify that part when the birds are flying through. So it just sort of correlates when the viewer's watching the birds fly past, they can also hear them just a little bit clearer. The same with this close-up of the grass shot. I think if I just make the wind in the grass sound effect just a little bit higher here. Very subtle, but it also works very well, I think. I do have this soft transition of me looking right to left, which cuts between the two clips. I can add a very subtle whoosh just to add to that movement and just make it sound a little bit more satisfying. I've got my whoosh sound effect here, and all we're gonna do is just drag that right into place. I wanna make the sound effect just a little bit slower, so we can do that through the rate stretch tool. And that's where the remix tool is. Once again, just hold down and then you'll find it here. We can then stretch this out and once again, put that at the same place. Very subtle, but I think this adds a little bit more to the video and just makes it a little bit more satisfying. Our next step is color grading, and this is probably everyone's favorite part of video editing. Now what we want to do is prioritize the preview here. So I'm going to drag this window just a little bit further down so we can see that a bit easier. And then I'm also going to go to our windows and we want to enable Lumetri color. And this is where we're going to make all our adjustments for our color grading. We're also going to enable the Lumetri scopes as well. All right, now that we have our workspace set up, what we want to do first is actually go to our project panel. And what we want to do is right click and create a new item. And this is going to be an adjustment layer. Now we're going to drag this adjustment layer on top of our videos in the timeline. I'm going to drag it over just like that. And now we're going to apply all our color grading to that adjustment layer instead of to our video. And this just makes it a lot more adaptable, a lot more rearrangeable, and then also just, yeah, easy for customization basically. So now back up in our Lumetri color panel, we have all these sliders here and all these tabs with even more options to tweak. So as I mentioned previously, we've shot this on the Canon R5 Mark II, and this is shot on C-Log 2, which is why it looks flat and kind of plain. Shooting in log footage like this just lets us get the most out of our footage. We can play with the colors, the contrast, and basically just get the most dynamic range out of our shot. But before we make our creative tweaks, we want to bring this into the Rec 709 color space. We click Input LUT, and I've actually downloaded the official LUTs from the Canon website where you can find these as well, where it has all the conversion LUTs from whatever you've shot in your Canon camera to the Rec 709 color space, or a different color space if you want to work in that. So I'm going to select this one because I've shot in Canon C-Log 2 and I want to convert it to 709. As we can see, our image already looks a lot better. Now I'm just going to use the razor tool just to cut our adjustment layers so they're separated for each clip once again. And now we can go ahead and just experiment with these sliders, these curves, anything in this Lumetri color tab. Basically, I like to just match the mood of the song or encapsulate what I saw in that moment when I was there. I'm just going to start experimenting and I'll explain a little bit more once I've finished. So what I've done is just gone for a bit more of a softer look, and because this was taken just after sunset or during sunset, I wanted to convey that blue hour look. So with the tone curves, this pretty much controls everything within our image. So it controls the light and the color. I won't go in depth with everything in the Lumetri color panel because that will probably take hours to explain, but the low part of our tone curves and the high part up here, this is basically our shadows, this is basically our highlights. So everything in between is our midtones. As you can see, I've brought up the shadows just slightly and brought down the highlights as well. And something we want to refer to every time we're making these adjustments is the Lumetri scopes. Like a histogram, this pretty much shows us just our exposure and all the colors and where they're sitting. What I like to do is just to have the smallest part of the image touch the black and this tiniest part touch the white as well. And this basically just means I'm using most of the dynamic range within the image, and you get that nice contrast between colors and light. Back to our tone curves. In the colored ones, I've just brought out some of the blues and the pinks in the highlights, just to give that blue hour vibe once again. We can scroll down to the rest of our curves, and I've brought the saturation generally up just to give a bit more color. I've adjusted a couple of the hues like the sky and the skin tones, and I've also adjusted the brightness of certain colors like the blues here, just to bring the sky down a little bit. Back into basic correction, I've just brought down the highlights once again to reduce that contrast, even brought the contrast slider down. But then I've also brought down the blacks just to add a little bit more punchiness in the shadows. This part is purely subjective. Obviously you can go too far with the sliders. You don't want to add too much saturation, too much contrast, which is what a lot of beginners do. So keeping it subtle is actually probably the best thing you could do. Now, because we've applied those colors to our adjustment layer, with this eye icon here, we can toggle this just to see the before and after of our color grade. A lot nicer compared to the log footage. Once again, this is the power of C-Log 2 on the Canon cameras. Super handy when it comes to color grading. What I can do now is hold Alt and duplicate this adjustment layer to our other clips, and then I can kind of just test and see what these look like on the rest of the videos. Because these were all shot in the same environment and lighting, then I won't have to tweak too much, but just some basic adjustments should do the trick. All right, I think they look pretty nice. Let's go ahead and play it. super peaceful. And now, just before we wrap up our timeline, this is the polishing touches. And this is just when I go over the whole video, go through the sound, go through the visuals, go over anything that I can find that I need to tweak, and just to double check if there's any mistakes that I made. For example, the horizon of this clip is a little bit off compared to this one. So I'm just gonna rotate this clip a little bit in our effect controls panel. I also noticed there's a little bit of shake in this bird shot, which we can fix with warp stabilizer. So if we go to our effects panel, we can drag the warp stabilizer effect onto our clip and it will do its thing. And there we go. It's completely still now. Same for this grass shot. I'm just gonna try use the warp stabilizer once again. And there we go. We have no movement in our shot anymore. Now, some other things I do in this section is also add captions, graphics, and transitions, but this video doesn't really need it. So I'm just gonna bring up an example just to show you what I'd usually do. Okay, so this is usually the timeline that I see when I'm making my videos. This is for a Canon C50 reel that I made recently. I applied the exact same workflow. It's just obviously a little bit more filled out, a little bit more complicated, but the same rules apply. I obviously had to keep this example timeline just a little bit more simple, otherwise we would have been here for hours. Canon just broke the barrier between cinema and content creation. As you can see, I have captions and graphics popping up, and it's quite simple. To create captions, all we have to do is go to the window and make sure that text is enabled. Once we go to the text panel, all you have to do is press transcribe and create captions. Since we don't have any talking in this video, it's not really gonna pick up anything, but if we go back to our timeline here, it'll generate all the text automatically from what you've said, which is amazing. And then you can go ahead and edit that. Basically just tweak it to however you like. For more bold text like this on the screen, we can go ahead and just use the text tool or the type tool, which is on the left bar here. We can press the letter T. We can then go over to the preview and just click on our mouse and it will bring up a little typing window. Let's just say I wrote the word peace. We can go to our properties panel up here, and this is where you can change the font, the color, the size, everything to do with the text. You can also use transitions built into Premiere with your video, but me personally, I don't think it works with this timeline. It does work in certain cases, but I would say as a beginner, never underestimate just a simple cut. We want to go to our effects panel once again, and we want to go to video transitions. As we can see, we have all these transitions, all these folders that we can decide on. All you have to do is just drag the effect between two clips or at the start or end of one clip. Now the final step is exporting. As a shortcut, you can click Command M. This will bring up our export workspace. And these next settings that I'll show you are just what I use for social media and just for general posting online. If we go up here to the preset section, I've actually created some custom presets. I've named one 4K IG reel upload, and this is not just for Instagram reels, but for pretty much any 4K video, this is what I export it as. I've also created one when I just export audio for speech enhancement. I'm gonna go ahead and click on the 4K IG reel upload. And these will set all the settings that I need just to go ahead and click export. I'm gonna run you quickly through what they are. So for video, I usually export at 4K, 30 frames. And then we always click render at maximum depth and use maximum render quality. Make sure these two are ticked. There's a lot of settings, so I'm just gonna scroll through these and you can pause if you want to. I set my target bitrate to 75. I know a lot of people set these to different numbers, and I could be wrong, but this is just what works for me and what I always do. These are my audio settings here, my multiplexer, whatever that is. And once again, if you do have captions, make sure you burn them into the video so then you can actually see them. Under effects, I have a gamma compensation LUT that just affects what I see when I'm editing compared to when I export. Here's the metadata, and general is all unticked. For the most common platform that I use, like Instagram, I'll usually export this all in 4K, as you can see. I'll then bring this into the Edits app on the phone and then re-export that in 2K, which will go directly to Instagram and upload in that high quality 2K. Anyways, all we have to do is click export and our video will be done. And there you go. Now you should know a little bit more about video editing with your Canon footage in Premiere Pro. We started with our importing to our structure and cutting, then to our music selection and sound design, and then our color grading and also polishing, and then to our final exporting. The great thing about Premiere Pro is that this whole process can be tailored to how you work and your workflow. I've been doing this for years, so I know this is the way that it's always worked for me. Maybe I'll adjust some things in the future, but for now, this is just what makes sense in my brain and is efficient for me. Hopefully video editing doesn't seem as daunting as it was before you watch this video. When you put the process together from A to B, it's just a bunch of baby steps you have to put together until you get your final result. If you did find this helpful, make sure to subscribe to Canon and also check out my page on Instagram, it is Wil, and maybe leave a comment down below on any questions that you have for your video editing journey so far. But other than that, enjoy.